Greetings, it is I, Countess Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the history of Magic the Gathering, where I go set by set, product by product that Wizards has released, and go over to you all the information about everything that Magic has in store for you. But let's continue where we left off with Betrayers of Kamigawa. So, this was actually the first small expansion and second overall expansion in the Kamigawa block. It was released on February 4th of 2005, and it had 165 cards. Now, it continued all of the mechanics that had been seen within Champions of Kamigawa, but introduced a couple of new ones. It had the mechanics of ninjas and key counters, and had the keywords of ninjutsu and offering. The set's symbol represented a shuriken, because it matched with the ninja theme of what's going on, because ninjas use shurikens. Now, it was sold in 15-card booster packs, 4 pre-constructed decks, and of course, a fat pack. The pre-release was on January 22nd of 2005, and the pre-release card was a foil alternate art Ink Eyes Servant of the Oni. This set also had a release card in the version of a alternate art foil Baduko Pupil. Now, it was accompanied by a novel. The storyline of this set follows Toshiro Umezawa as he serves and lives up to his commitments to Princess Muchinko and to the Myojin of the Knight's Reach. In the meantime, the Kami War continues to spread and threaten to destroy the entire plane, while the most powerful spirit of the o-kagachi, arrives on the scene and threatens to basically bring an end to this war and the sides of the spirits, and destroy all mortal kind. On the other side, we focus on the Daimyo Konda as he continues his war against the spirits, but we learn that under his continence and his sort of hidden things, there boils a dark secret that might actually be at the heart of this overall war and why it is being fought. Now, the keyword ninjutsu was a special ability that you could pay a ninjutsu cost, and then effectively you would put the ninja tapped into play, attacking target opponent. To do this, you had to also then return a tapped, unblocked attacking creature from play to your hand. Effectively, you would switch them out. So if I attacked with a creature, it was unblocked, basically your opponent chose not to block it, I could pay the ninjutsu cost, chuck out my ninja, replacing it, and that's the creature that it was, now is the ninja, tapped, attacking, unblocked, and that's basically what ninjutsu lets you do. Sneak in something bigger or something with a special effect to hit your opponents. Offering was a special ability that you could effectively use an offering ability as instant speed, allowing you to summon a creature like an instant. What you would have to do is, offering would let you know a creature that would match the effective type of whatever, in this case, spirit creature had offering on it. You would sacrifice that creature, and then the difference between its mana cost and the mana cost of the creature with offering, you would have to pay that difference. And then you could play this creature as an instant. So let's say it's one of the patrons, which represent the 5 races, the non-human races of Kamigawa. You want to play one of the patrons, you sacrifice the appropriate creature, whatever the difference between that creature's casting cost and the casting cost of the patron, you pay that difference, you could play it at any time now. You are using the previous creature, sacrificing it to pay part of the mana cost, also allowing you to play it as an instant. Now, this set had 8 cycles. The first cycle were, of course, the patrons, which I just mentioned. There was one of each color. Each of the patrons would be linked to one of those 5 races. You could sacrifice one of the members of that race to play it using its offering cost. They all had pretty powerful, potent abilities, matching kind of their color scheme. There was, of course, alternate cost splice cards. There was a cycle of alternate cost splice cards. There were common ones that each of them would have splice ability, that when you would splice into arcane, you would do something other than play mana. It had an alternate cost to it. There was also, of course, a cycle of Baku. The Baku were spirits that when you would play a spirit or arcane spell, you would put a key counter on it. You could remove key counters from it for ability. They were common. There was a cycle of flip cards. These were uncommon flip cards that during certain things would trigger that you put key counters on them. When you had a certain amount of key counters on them, you had an option to flip it over into a legendary form, and these legendary flip cards would have abilities that would eat up. You'd have to feed them the key counters you got earlier when they were non-legendary for very potent abilities. So you effectively build up a number of key counters on them, choose when to appropriately flip them over, and then use those key counters for abilities. There was the Genju. The Genju were enchant lands, or auras that you would enchant lands, that when you put it on a land, you effectively could make it into a creature, and then it would attack. It could attack, it could block, it would still be a land. The thing is, if that land creature is put into the graveyard from play, you may return the enchantment, the Genju, from the graveyard to your hand. So you could enchant this land, make it a creature. If it dies somehow, you get the enchantment back to enchant another land. There's a cycle of 1 mana cost spirits that each of them was 1/1s that you could sacrifice them for an ability. There was a cycle of lobotomy spells. Each of these would target a certain type of card in play, removing it from the game, and then allowing you to search your opponent's library, hand, and graveyard for copies of that, and also remove from the game. There's a cycle of shoals. These were arcane spells that would allow you to effectively pitch a card in order to pay for part of its casting cost. Each of these had 2 mana X casting costs, and I could choose to pitch a matching color spell, and effectively that matching color spell's converted mana cost would be the X part of this cost. So if I wanted to cast this shoal and I pitched a card that matched its description, basically if it's a white shoal, I'm pitching the white card and had a converted mana cost of 5, then the X in my white shoal is 5. There's also a vertical cycle in the form of the glass kites. The glass kites were blue creatures that when they were targeted by a spell or ability for the first time each turn, you would counter that spell or ability. So basically, first thing that targets a glass kite, counter. Now, the pre-constructed decks were a black-red called Dark Devotion, a blue deck called Ninjutsu, a black deck called Rat's Nest, and a white-green called Spiritcraft. Now, there were 6 reprinted cards, including Phantom Wings, and 2 functional reprints, including Goblin Cohort for Mog Conscripts. This was the first set to feature cards with Defender that weren't walls. So, they did change it in the last set. When I mentioned, they changed it to the fact that now walls had the Defender keyword on them that was now sort of added into them post cards, that from now on, if it's a wall, it doesn't automatically get Defender. It's going to have Defender put on it if it makes sense to be there. It's not intrinsically linked that a wall can't attack. But now, we have non-wall creatures with Defender. Let's talk about some of the cards from this set. There's Umezawa's Jite. Now, for 2, you could equip it. When a creature deals combat damage to a player, you put 2 charge counters on the Jite. Now, you may remove a charge counter for one of the 3 following things. You could give the creature that it is equipped with +2/+2 until end of turn. You could give target creature -1/-1 until end of turn, or you could gain 2 life. So you deal damage to an opponent, you get 3 counters, you get 2 counters on here, and you can spend them to either make it bigger, make something smaller, or gain some life. Great for utility. There was Inkai's Servant of the Oni. This was a ninja. It had a ninjutsu cost of 3 colorless, 2 black. When it would deal combat damage to an opponent, you may take a creature card from their graveyard, put it into play under your control. And for a colorless and a black, you regenerated Inkai's. So it's a way that you could sneak in Inkai's, deal damage to an opponent, steal a creature from their graveyard, and even then, after you've ninjutsu'd Inkai's in, still, you could attack with Inkai's, and if they leave it unblocked, you steal another creature. If not, it regenerates. Tendu Ice Bridge. It comes into play with a charge counter on it. You can tap it to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or you can remove a charge counter from it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So you can tap it for colorless, and you do get 1 mana of anything for having it out once. Shining Shoal. So, this is the white shoal, where you could remove a white card from your hand from the game. Its converted mana cost of X represents the X in a Shining Shoal, and what it does is, when a source would deal damage to a creature you control or you may instead have that X damage be dealt to target player. You basically move damage from a creature you control or you to a player. There's also Blazing Shoal. It's the red shoal that you remove a red card from the game to pay for the X cost. Its converted mana cost is the X of the shoal, where you have target creature get +X/+O until end of turn. There's Threads of Disloyalty. You can only play Threads of Disloyalty on a creature with a converted mana cost of 2 or less. You gain control of target creature. This actually can be really good more into the future now, where you can get some ridiculous tokens, which have a converted mana cost of 0. And guess what? Yoink. Yours. For pretty cheap. Goryo's Vengeance. You take target legendary creature from your graveyard, put it back into play, it gains haste, you exile at the beginning of your next end step, but this also has Splice into Arcane for 2 colorless and a black. Ninja of the Deep Hours. It has ninjutsu of a colorless and a blue. When it deals combat damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. So this is one you could sneak in with ninjutsu to draw an extra card. Flames of the Blood Hunt. It deals 4 damage to target player. This damage cannot be prevented, and should that player gain life this turn, they instead gain no life. So not only do you burn an opponent, you can't stop them from taking this damage, they don't gain any more life after this, the entire turn. Boom. Crack the Earth. Each player sacrifices a permanent. If you have tokens, well, and your opponents do not, it can actually be pretty decent. Clash of Realities. All spirits have, when this creature enters the battlefield, you may have it deal 3 damage to target non-spirit creature. And all non-spirit creatures have, when this creature enters the battlefield, you may have it deal 3 damage to target spirit. Day of Destiny. All legendary creatures get +2/+2. Enshrined Memories. It's an X card where you reveal the top X cards of your library, put all creature cards revealed this way into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library, in any order. Final Judgment. Exile all creatures from play. Bam! So it's the white board wipe, but exile. A great way of dealing with things like Indestructible and other difficult to deal with creatures. You have to worry about your own, but still. Genju of the Realm. It costs you 1 of every mana. It's a rainbow card. For 2, the enchanted land becomes an 8/12 trample spirit land creature that's still a land. That's a legend. When the land Genju of the Realm is enchanting is put into the graveyard from play, you may return Genju of the Realm to your hand. So it's like the other Genjus, where if the creature controlling it or its enchanting dies, you get it back. Heartless Hitagetsu. Tap. Heartless Hitagetsu deals damage to each player equal to half of their life total, rounded down. So effectively, Heartless Hitagetsu halves everyone's lives just by tapping it. Higiri of the Still Wind. It's got ninjutsu of 2 colorless, 2 blue. When Higiri deals combat damage to an opponent, you may search your library for a ninja card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. And for 2 colorless, target ninjas unblockable until end of turn. So not only do you get more ninjas, you could make ninjas unblockable and get more of their effects. Kami of False Hope. It was one of those 1 mana cost spirits you could sacrifice. You sacrifice them to prevent all combat damage to be dealt this turn. It's a white Spore Frog. So if you liked Spore Frog, which I talked about back in Prophecy, there's a white version of it. I have one in my white-black deck where I can bring it back. There's Kira, Great Glass Spinner. Oh, I love Kira. I have it in my blue deck. Kira gives all creatures you control have, when this creature is first targeted by a spell or ability, the first time each turn, you counter it. So the Glass Kite ability, Kira Great Glass Spinner, gives it to all of your creatures, including itself, because it says all creatures you control have that. And it's a 2/2 flyer also. Kodama of the Center Tree. Kodama of the Center Tree has power and toughness equal to the number of spirits you control. It also has Soul Shift X, where X is the number of spirits you control. So not only is it as big as number of spirits, but when it dies, you get back a spirit as big as the number of spirits you control. Kyoki, Sanity's Eclipse. It's got some spirit craft to it. So when you play a spirit or arcane, Kyoki has target player remove 1 of their cards from their hand from the game. Of course, it's their choice. Mirror Gallery. You ignore the legend rule. More precisely, the legend rule doesn't apply. Meaning now, if you have Mirror Gallery out, you can play with a playset of legends. You can play with copies of legends. Legends, legends, legends. You can have so many different legends, and the same one over and over and over again, as long as you have Mirror Gallery out. Ornate Kanzashi. 2 tap. Target opponent removes the top card of his or her library from the game. Until end of turn, you may play that card if it was in your hand. So not only do you remove a card from an opponent's library from the game, you might be able to play it. Oyobi, the Spirit of Heaven, a 3/6 flyer that whenever you play a spirit or arcane card, you may put a 3/3 flying spirit into play. So it gives you spirit tokens as long as you're playing a spirit deck or arcane deck. Patron of the Moon, a 5/4 flyer with Moonfolk Offering, that for 1 mana you may put 2 land cards from your hand into play tapped. This really works well with a card drawing deck because blue, you draw a lot of cards. You can't play that many lands on a turn. Guess what? You can pay 1 mana and put 2 into play tapped. Can't use them till next turn, but you've set it up ahead of time. Patron of Nezumi, a 6/6 with Rat Offering. So it's the Rat Patron. Whenever a permanent is put into an opponent's graveyard, that opponent loses 1 life. It doesn't save from play. So if you mill them in a black-blue deck, or you have them discard a card, or you destroy kings in play, anytime this calls the permanent to go to their graveyard, they lose a life. That's why I love the Patron of Nezumi. The Patron of Orochi, 7/7 with Snake Offering. It's the Snake Patron. You can tap it to untap all forests and green creatures you control, including itself because it is a green creature, but you may only do this once a turn. But effectively, if you leave the Patron of Orochi ready, you can tap it just to untap all your stuff at any time. And it is once a turn, not once during your turn. You can even do this on opponent's turn. Patron of Orochi. I love this one also. These 3 patrons are wonderful. Shinrei Shinzo Caretaker. Ooh, I love this one in my black-green deck. Whenever a creature with a power of 1 or less is put into your graveyard from play, at the end of the turn, if you still control Shinzo, you may return that creature from your graveyard to play. This works well in both my black-white and black-green because guess what I have? Spore Frog, Kami of False Hope, both 1/1s that I can sacrifice to prevent all damage. Sacrifice it. End of my turn. Oh wait, it had a power of 1 or less. Comes back into play under my control because I will probably still have Shin. That's why I love Shinrei. Great combos with sacrificing creatures. Sosuke summons. Put 2/2 green snake creature tokens into play that are 1/1. Whenever you play a non-token snake card, you may return Sosuke summons from your graveyard to your hand. Playing a snake deck and you start playing normal snakes, you get back this to get more snake tokens. Cycle repeats to get lots and lots of snake tokens using it. Sway of the Stars. Each player shuffles their hand, graveyard, and all permanents they have in play into their library. They draw 7 cards, and all their life totals become 7. So effectively, you reset the game, and then change everybody's life total to 7. That which was taken. For 4, tap, put a Divinity counter on target permanent that is not that which is taken. Each permanent with a Divinity counter on it is indestructible. So that which is taken can make other stuff indestructible. Tomorrow, Azami's Familiar. Whenever you would draw a card, instead you may look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, and put the other 2 on the bottom of your library in any order. So effectively, you get to look at 3 cards every time you would draw. You only get 1 of them, so you might lose some cards that you might really also want, if one of them's better than the rest. But you keep cycling through your deck this way. Toshiro Umezawa. Bushido 1. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into their graveyard from play, you may play an instant card from your graveyard, as though it was in your hand, so still paying the mana cost. If it would be put into the graveyard from play during this turn, instead it's exiled. So you can basically take an instant, play it as if it was in your hand, and if it's going into your graveyard after done playing it, it gets exiled, so you get an extra use out of it every time one of your opponent's creatures dies. Walker of the Secret Ways. A creature with ninjutsu of 1 blue, 1 colorless. Whenever it would deal damage to an opponent, you may look at that opponent's hand. And for a colorless and a blue, you may return target ninja you control to your hand. You can only do this during your turn. Yomiji, who bars the way. Whenever a legendary permanent other than Yomiji, who bars the way, would be put into the graveyard from play, return that card to its owner's hand. I specifically put this in one of my legend decks, because the fact is I'm playing with more legends and legendary permanents than my opponents. So if they get back like 1 or 2 things, oh, too bad. If I get back everything when we put it in the graveyard, well. But that's it for today. I introduce you to Betrayers of Kamigawa. Now, truthfully speaking, there are a lot of these cards in this set that are cool, and I talked about a lot of them, and they can be good in specific decks, but many of them, again, similar to the last one, Champions of Kamigawa, just didn't have the same power. And the ninjutsu mechanic, as interesting as it is kind of confusing also. It's confusing like the flip cards. Every mechanic in this set seems to just have a level of confusion in it. Even Bushido. It's a static ability that only activates when your creature's attacking or blocking. Alright, so it gets bigger when it attacks or blocks? Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. When it goes into combat, it gets bigger. But this one, we focus on the ninjutsu. We focus on the offering. Both of them are very wordy abilities, is the best way to describe them. Very complex abilities. I like both of them. The offering mechanic is very cool. That you could sacrifice a creature as part of another creature's mana cost. And that creature that you sacrificed, its mana cost is subtracted from the next one up. Basically, I paid a cost ahead of time. I'm sacrificing this creature, so part of the cost of the next creature is paid up. And I can play it as an instant. And there are plenty of cards in this set I really still like. I love Shinrei, Shinzo Caretaker. Use them a lot. Kami of the False Hope. There are a couple others, which I would say are really decent cards, especially in the legacy decks that I oftentimes play. So you can see how, though there were problems at the time, which I can reflect upon, because I can see the fact that, just like the set before, too many legends, not as powerful as it had been, and a lot of confusing abilities, which continued from Champions. It hasn't corrected itself up until now. It still has these three things that make it not as good of a set as the Mirrodin block or the Ravenica block to follow. That makes Kamigawa just fail in comparison. And it's one of the reasons why it does tend to be unpopular. But again, there are cards from it that you might want to look at, especially if you want to play Legacy nowadays, or even Modern. These are part of Modern. We're already in the Modern age. Mirrodin and 8th edition marked Modern. So we're already in that time that you could start playing any card we're talking in a Modern deck. But if you're looking at Vintage, Legacy, Modern, these have some decent cards in them that I would recommend you take a look at when you're building your decks. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's just for the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you could always check out my Patreon. Link description below. I have some great rewards, and it does help to grow and improve the channel. If you're looking for some more Magic the Gathering content, and have watched everything I've seen, you can check out Card Bazaar, They Said, We Said, and Tasty Snackies, my friends of the multiverse. Great people that do some great Magic the Gathering content. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.